What's up guys, Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com. So in this video we're continuing our series on getting started with SketchUp Pro in 2024. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so in the last video we modeled an exterior of a house. In this video we're going to talk through how we can create a floor plan. And specifically we're going to talk about creating a floor plan from an image. You don't have to use an image, you can just draw your own floor plan if you want to. But if you do want to download the example floor plan that I'm using in this video, you can get it by visiting TheSketchUpEssentials.com/floor plan. But basically the way this works is to start off, you need to get your floor plan image into SketchUp and you need to get it to scale. And so this can be a little bit weird because SketchUp doesn't really import PDF files. So if you have a PDF file that you're trying to bring in, you're probably going to have to convert that to a TIFF image or a JPEG image. But what I want to do is I want to start by importing that image. So I can just do a file, import, and I'm going to go find that floor plan. And in this case, note that we have an option at the bottom of the page to use the image, as a texture, or as a matched photo. Now in this case, we want to bring this in as an image. So to do that, I'm just going to double click and notice how that brings that into my scene right here. Now, what we want to do is we just want to single click and then move our mouse, and notice how that's going to bring this image in. Now you can just kind of click in here. It doesn't really matter at the moment because what we need to do is we need to scale this image. And so notice how this image has dimensions on it. And at the moment, if I was to use the tape measure tool and try to pull a dimension, right? So if I go from here to here, notice how this is only 13 foot 8 inches, but it needs to be 45 foot 10.5 inches. And so what we need to do is we need to resize this. And so in order to resize this, what I need to do is I need to explode the image, because right now this is in here as an image type, meaning if I double click in here, I can't actually edit this, right? But if I right click on this and I click on the option to explode, what that's going to do is that's going to explode that image into a face and then 4 edges. And then I can just double click on here in order to pick up this face and all of the sides. I can right click and I can make them a group. And so now what I can do is I can double click into this group right here, and I'm going to basically use my tape measure tool to resize this image. And so what you want to do in a situation like this, and it's best to do this on the longest dimension if you can, but we just want to click on the option for tape measure. Notice how right now that tape measure has a little plus on it. That means it's in create guide mode, and we don't want that in this case. So just tap your control key on your keyboard in order to toggle that off. But what I want to do is I want to pick a point on this image. So right here, and then I want to scroll in and I want to pick another point right here. And you want to be precise with the way that you click when you do this, but I want to single click. And so notice what I've done is I've measured a length in here like this. Well, what I can do is I can type in a different value. So I'm going to type in 45 foot 10.5 inches and hit the enter key. And notice how when I hit the enter key, and it's important that you don't click on anything else while you're doing this, but it's going to ask if I want to resize the active group or component. And I'm going to say yes. And so what happens is it's going to resize that image based on that dimension that I set in here. And you can go back in with your tape measure tool and you can check it, right? So I'm going to single click here, move my mouse over this. Notice how this is 45 foot 10.5 inches. So this image has now been created to scale. Now, one thing that gets a little bit funky about this is because this is an image file, we're going to be modeling walls. So let's say I just drew a simple wall like this, and I grouped it just for the sake of this video. So I'm just going to make a group right here. The problem is if I double click into this group, notice how that image file goes away. This is a weird thing with SketchUp where textures that are applied to objects fade out, right? And when we exploded this group, or when we exploded the image and made it a group, what happened was this is now an object where the texture is going to fade out if we group something. So what I like to do, and I wish there was another way to do this, but I don't think there is I actually like to re-import a copy of the image that's exactly the same size as this one. When you do that, it's still going to be to scale, but then you're going to have an image object in here rather than a group. So I'm just going to do a file import. I'm going to re-import this image right here, and I'm just going to click on this corner and click on this corner right here. And so notice how now I have an image file in here. Well, now if I double click, and I need to get rid of the other object, so you can go into your outliner and look for the object that's a group right here, and you can delete that out. So when you delete that group out, like this, then you just have an image file in here. Well, now if I double click on this object, notice how it doesn't fade. So that's just kind of a weird deal. I wish you could turn off the texture fading when you're editing groups and components, but you can't. So that's how we're going to fix that. But now what we want to do is we want to take this and we want to model on top of it in order to create our floor plan. And so one thing that you need to be aware of and that you need to think about is when you model your floor plan in here, you need to make sure that you're not just kind of eyeballing it. You can kind of eyeball it if you're trying to do something fast, right? So if I just wanted to create something really quick, I could just come in here and create a couple boxes and then just offset them in to create my wall. But if you're trying to model something precisely, what you want to do is you want to pick a point like this corner. You want to find that point, but instead of moving your mouse over here and clicking like this, you need to type in a value. So in this case, I would type in a value of 45 foot, 10.5 inches right here to draw that line specifically to that dimension. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to use the line tool, and I'm just going to keep drawing these lines. And right there, I drew that line a little bit too long. So I'm just going to type in a value of 18 foot, 4 inches. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just working my way around the outside of this model right here in order to get the full length. And when you have something like this long dimension, you can hold the shift key and move your mouse over this line right here in order to draw a line that's the same length. And then you're just going to fill it in. Well, what that does is that is going to basically fill in your shape right here. And I'm going to go ahead and select this face and delete it for a second. And so now what we want to do is we want to create our walls around the inside. And so I'm going to pull a quick measurement on this wall just to verify. It looks like this wall's in here is about a 6-inch wall. Usually you'll have some kind of a note in there, or depending on what you're doing, you may want to, you're going to want to know what the thickness of the actual wall assembly is. For simplicity's sake right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this a 6-inch wall. And so I want to heel this face back in here, and you can do that just by redrawing over a line, and notice how it creates this face. But now what I can do is I can tap the F key to activate the offset tool, and I'm just going to mouse over this face and I'm going to single click. And notice how when I single click, what I can do is I can move my mouse in by a certain length, or I can type in a value. So say I typed in a value of 6 and hit the enter key, that's going to offset this in like this. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete out my extra of my floor for right now. And so this is where I want to introduce you to the concept of grouping your objects. And so what I want to do is I want to group this exterior wall, and I want to label it in my outliner. So in this situation, I'm going to double click on this object, right click, and I'm going to make it a group. And so notice how when I make it a group, what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to keep this object separate from everything else. I usually recommend creating a tag as well at this point so that you can put all of the, or you can put this group on a tag and you can toggle it on and off. So in this case, I'm just going to add a tag, and I'm going to call this walls-exterior. And I actually like to label the groups in the outliner as well. So again, walls-exterior. exterior. And by keeping this organized, there's a lot of different things we can do with this, especially when you're trying to go into layout. I don't want to get too far into that for right now. Just know that I recommend that as you create these objects, you group them. And so what I want to do in this situation is notice how if I hide this or toggle it off, and I want to make sure that I select it and I put it on the exterior walls tag so that I can toggle it on and off, I've got windows in here, right? And so these windows are on the wall. I'm kind of lacking dimensions, so we're just going to have to go in here and kind of like figure out where those are going to be. But what I want to do is I want to rough out the openings before I extrude this to 3D. And one of the things I actually find helpful is if I double click in here, I can delete out this face for a minute while I'm figuring out where my windows are going to go. And so one of the ways that I might do this is by creating guides. And so the tape measure tool is a tool that can create guides in SketchUp. Remember that guides are basically visual indicators, kind of like snapping a chalk line in here. They're visual indicators without actually creating geometry in your model. And so in this case, you need to make sure that you tap the Control key so that you're in create guide mode, but I'm gonna find an end and a single click and I'm gonna move my mouse. And I'm gonna figure out where these windows go. So in this case, it looks like these are about 2'5" right here. And I'm just going to draw guides in here where those windows are going to go. And then I'm going to rough those openings out on my wall. And so basically I'm adding guides wherever anything happens in here so that I can see where all of those objects are going to be. But then what I'm going to do once I've done that, and I'm going to go all the way around my floor plan and do this, but then what I can do is I can draw lines where those guides are, and so I can split this out on this wall so that I know where all of my windows and doors are going to be really quickly. And notice how when you draw over top of these like this with your line tool, it's going to fill this surface in. That's okay. We're going to have to fill that surface in anyway, but it's going to do that when you draw across this face. You can just delete this out when you're coming in here and you're drawing your dimensions. All right, so now I've got all these openings blocked out. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to finish drawing the edges in here where those windows occur, just because I'm splitting this face up. All right, so now we're in pretty good shape here. And I'm gonna erase out most of these guides. I drew a couple guides for interior walls. In fact, I'm just gonna get rid of all of the guides for right now. So to do that, I'm gonna go up to Edit, I'm gonna click on Delete Guides, and that's going to get rid of all of these. And so what this is going to do is this is now going to be split up in a way where we can tap the P key and use the push-pull tool in order to extrude this up like this. But before I do that, I usually like to rough out the rest of my interior walls as well, just so that I'm not fighting with three-dimensional faces in here. And in this case, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you click out of this exterior walls group, because we're going to create another group in here for our interior walls. And in this case, I can just come in here and I can just kind of draw those walls. So in this case, this looks like this is about 6 feet, and draw a line over here. And in this situation, I'm just going to take both of these edges, I'm going to select them. So I'm just going to do a click and then a shift click, and I'm going to offset them in by the thickness of my wall, which in this case appears to be about 4 inches, just for simplicity's sake. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this in like this, and that's given me a wall on the interior. And again, probably what we're going to do is we're going to use guides in order to mark out where your doors are going to be. So in this case, this has a 3-foot pocket door. So I'm just going to use guides in order to generate that. But I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to draw the rest of my interior walls real quick. And so we're going to use a guide to figure out where this stair is going to stop, at least on this floor plan right here. Okay, and so once we've got these interior walls roughed out, we can go ahead and we can do an edit delete guides again, but I'm just going to take these walls and I'm just going to hold the shift key and click and drag across them, and I'm going to pick up all of this wall geometry that we've created. And I want to right click and I want to put that in another group. And in this case, we're going to call this walls interior. And we can also create a tag for that. I usually recommend that you do that. So we're going to do walls interior. We're going to tag the group. So we're just going to select the walls group, which you can do either here or in the outliner. We're going to tag them walls interior so that we can toggle them on and off. And I'm going to go ahead and delete out this surface right here. But now we're kind of at a point where we can go to 3D with our object. And so to do that, I'm going to start with my interior walls. So it doesn't really matter, you can go either way. But what I want to do is I want to double click into this group. There's an extra line on this wall that I'm going to erase out. So just E and then click and drag across this. But what I want to do is I'm going to push pull these up to whatever my wall height is going to be. In this case, I push pulled this up to 10 feet. Remember, with the push pull tool, what you can do is you can double click in order to repeat an action to the same dimension. So notice what I can do is I can just come in here and I can just double click really quickly in order to take all these wall parts and pieces to 3D. And so in this situation, we've created the walls and we've got openings in here, but we need to take those openings and make them more door sized. And in this case, I'm assuming that all of my doors are going to be 7 foot high. And so what I'm going to do is notice how I have got this extra geometry down here at the bottom. Now we could push pull this up right here and then come in here and draw a line and push pull an opening. That's a valid way to do that. I have no problem with that. Usually what I do is I select it like this and I just want to pick up this face right here and I use the move tool in copy mode. So I tap the M key and then I tap Control to go into copy mode, and I can single click and move my mouse in the blue direction. I can type in a value of 7 feet. What that does is that creates a copy of this geometry at 7 feet right here, and then I can push pull this up the rest of the way and erase out this extra geometry. And you can come in here and you can clean these up as well. You can get rid of this extra geometry. You don't really need it anymore. So I'm going to do the same thing for my doors and my walls over here. And you can come in here and pick up 2 of these at once as long as you're careful with the amount of geometry that you have selected. You can't push pull them both at once, but you can do the move tool and copy mode trick all at once. And I'm just going to delete out this extra geometry. All right, so now we've got our interiors in here and they're created. One of the cool things about this is because we've toggled or tagged the interior walls on their own tag, we can toggle them off so that we can work with our exterior. And the process for the exterior is going to be mostly the same. So you're going to come in here and you're going to push pull this up 10 feet like this, and you're going to pick up everything that isn't a door or window. Now the one thing you need to be aware of when you're doing this though is the windows are going to be a little bit different. And so they're different in the sense that the doors are simple. You just take this bottom geometry, right? Use the move tool in copy mode to copy this up 7 feet. Then you can push pull this up. But with the windows, you need to push pull them up first. And honestly, that probably makes them a little bit easier, because what you want to do in this situation is you want to push pull this up to whatever the height of the bottom of the window is going to be. So we'll say 36 inches in this case. And so you want to push pull that bottom piece up, and it may be better to go around and push pull all of your window geometry up to that same height, just because you can keep using that push pull tool in order to do that. But then you can come in here and I'm going to do a double click on this surface to pick up the top edge and the selected geometry. And you could really do this with multiple windows too if you wanted to, but I'm just going to use the move tool in copy mode and I'm going to copy this up 48 inches right here. And then I'm going to push pull this the rest of the way. And so now I have my window opening in my wall. And if all of your windows are going to be similar size, you could just come in here and you could just do a shift double click in order to pick up all of these. And then you can just use the move tool in copy mode, copy them up to that same height. So if I hold the shift key to lock that blue inference, I can mouse over this point right here in order to do that. But then it's just a question of push pulling your geometry the rest of the way. And then coming in here and cleaning up your extra geometry using the eraser tool. And if you do accidentally pick up a part of your wall or something, just do a Control-Z to undo. So undoing is very easy to do in SketchUp. All right, so then you've got your floor plan basically laid out. You can toggle those interior walls back on as well using the tags function right here. And you've now got all of your walls and doors roughed out. All right, so that's where I'm in this video. In the next video, we'll talk about how to do doors and windows and the openings. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you have any questions. If you do want to learn more about how to use SketchUp, make sure you check out the SketchUp Essentials course, which is my in-depth course where I teach you how to use SketchUp. That also includes a community forum and live calls where you can get your questions answered. I will link to that on this page. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.